Opinion, I'm Asher Westropp-Evans, inviting you to prove me wrong. So, my attention was recently caught by a statement from the IMF annual meeting's plenary speech.
Today, we face a new Bretton Woods moment. A pandemic that has already cost more than 1 million lives. An economic calamity that will make the world economy 4.4% smaller this year and strip an estimated 11 trillion of output by next year.
That was Kristalina Georgieva, IMF Managing Director, speaking about the need for a fundamental paradigm shift in the global economy. Now, it's worth reflecting on the enormity of what Ms. Georgieva is suggesting, as the original Bretton Woods was the first agreement of its kind in history, a fully negotiated global monetary order resting at that time upon the gold standard and the US dollar. Bretton Woods put into place the rules for the expansion and sustainability of democratic capitalism, which ultimately would triumph over the counterparts in centrally controlled Soviet-style economies. However, it's the conditions that surrounded the post-war order which made the deal so revolutionary. Bretton Woods came near the end of World War II at a time when US leadership was a visionary light and had the economic and political leverage to impose its will on others, a situation in stark contrast with today's global attitude. Bretton Woods was designed to avoid a repeat of the horrors of the war, establishing a standard that became the globalized system we know today. And it took a lot of bloody work.
At Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, delegates from 44 allied and associate countries arrived for the opening of the United Nations Monetary and Financial Conference.
After 2 years of preparation, the US gathered 730 delegates from all 44 allied nations at the Mount Washington Hotel in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, for over 3 weeks of negotiation, before they signed the agreement eventually on July 22nd. And now, today, despite living in an era of unparalleled peace and prosperity, with no world war raging, other than a microscopic one I guess, such solutions seem a far way off. Central banks today find themselves in the unenviable position of already having cut interest rates to at or below zero, while having only the choice to print their way out of a crisis of their own making. The consequence is that with the masses of fresh liquidity injected by nations around the world, asset prices are becoming ever divorced from reality, as highlighted by the state of stock markets like those in the US, which have indices tapping all-time highs despite the rest of the economy suffering the consequences of the ongoing pandemic. And so it gets me thinking, what does a new Bretton Woods level agreement, the likes of what the IMF suggests, actually look like? Well, the facts on the ground show that state-controlled capitalism is having an unparalleled heyday. China, the world's second biggest economy, saw growth of 4.9% between July and September, compared to the same quarter last year. And China is now leading the charge for a global recovery based on its latest GDP data. So is state capitalism the answer? Maybe. I think most in the West would argue not. Yet one of the other serious alternatives, a CBDC-based financial infrastructure, seems to lack support among the strongest players, with Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell recently saying, "We do not think it's more important to get it right than to be first, and getting it right means that we not only look at the potential benefits of a CBDC, but also the potential risks, and also recognize the important trade-offs that have to be thought through carefully." Powell said this in a panel discussion on digital payments hosted by the IMF. So where does that leave the global economy? As we see the largest transfer of wealth in human history flowing into the hands of billionaires and major asset holders, a time has come to take on this Gilded Age and seek alternative solutions. The IMF is right. Business as usual cannot continue. But what replaces it? And the fact those in power are considering options as diverse as CBDCs and global stablecoins means that we could be on the cusp of a major shakeup. But without the sort of universal goodwill, or at least political will, that characterized the late 1940s, governments' refusal to experiment with the sort of visionary solutions that lay before them seem to suggest there may have to be a lot more pain before anyone takes anything even approaching the serious action needed to shake up the global economy. At least the positive note we can say is that people are out there developing, growing, and building an ecosystem that, should regulators finally get on board, may actually help to change the system. But for now, I think it might be a lot of hurt in the near future. But you know what? Prove me wrong. I'm Asher Westropp-Evans, and this is Immutable Opinion.